Aloha, it's Antonio with hypnosisproductreviews.com. Today I've got three very special guests. I've got Dave Elman's son, Larry Elman, his wife, Cheryl, and their dog, Rosie. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
And Rosie's coming up.
Rosie wants to say hello. Rosie the hypno dog.
And they actually told me that Rosie the hypno dog actually has a Facebook following.
She does.
Interesting. How can people find more about Rosie?
RosieElman.com.
No, not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's on Facebook. Just Rosie Elman.
And she at the moment has these very colorful feet. She on November 2nd broke her toe, so this is her 8th different colored cast. And
wow, why would she go and break her toes?
Yeah.
It was an accident.
Yeah.
She had an argument with the cover of a frying pan and she lost.
It looks like she lost really badly.
Yeah. Well, on Christmas, her color was red and her foot looked like Santa's hat upside down.
Ouch.
It was cute.
So, we're here to talk about Hypnothoughts Live. They're going to be doing is it a pre-conference or is it just a general talk at Hypnothoughts?
We've got a pre-conference two-dayer. We each have several workshops and seminars within the conference.
Sweet. I think you have, if I remember correctly, we were chatting the other day, you have 4 of them, I believe, right?
Yes. I'm doing 2. I'm doing fascination of fractionation. So how to use different types of fractionation within your sessions to help deepen people. And the other one is troubleshooting the Dave Elman induction, which is a 2-hour. So it's a workshop, and people will get to keep practicing and feel much more secure in their use of it. And then Larry's doing 2 of them also. He's doing, if you want to go over your 2.
Sure. I'm doing the other inductions of Dave Elman. Everybody today has heard of, and a huge number of hypnotists use the full Dave Elman induction. However, when he was teaching, he had about 24 inductions, because there are many times when you don't need the full thing. Giving one quick example, if it's your first meeting with a client, or in the case of a doctor with a patient, you might want to use the full thing. But on a subsequent meeting, do you really need the full thing, or do you just need a short induction, having given them previously a post-hypnotic that when they go into hypnosis, they'll go right to the depth they were at previously? So there are several versions, and that's what that particular talk is on. And my other is called Stuttering, Obesity, Fears, allergies, and more. Think for a second, what are the connections between the various items I just mentioned, which most hypnotists handle separately? The answer is just about all of them are partially psychosomatic and initiate with some sort of ISE. So if you look at it that way, you can develop your procedures to be able to do all of them and simply vary with whatever the client needs. Also, if a client has more than one of these, you know how to combine your pattern to handle them.
Oh, interesting. Now, the one thing that not many people know, and I would love for you to talk about this, I think Sean Michael Andrews told me or mentioned it. Your dad actually helped the government. Was it help the government against the Nazis, I believe it was?
That's correct. Within the family, we usually joke that he was the only Jewish agent in a Nazi spy ring, which is somewhat of an exaggeration. But he helped the FBI capture one group of Nazis who were signaling. Having been a Boy Scout, he spotted the signaling was Morse code and proceeded to help translate and got the FBI on that group. And then after that, because of his contacts in radio, he was used by the FBI to try and make sure that no radio commercials or other breaks would be used to send what would sound to the average person like an innocuous comment that was actually a clue to the U-boats offshore. You have to understand this was in 1942 when U-boats were actually sinking ships within sight of land along the Jersey coast, the Florida coast, and just about every place in between. And they were getting their directions as to where the convoys were coming from radio broadcasts in New York that held things like I've just described.
Wow, interesting. Now, I vaguely remember seeing a video. Oh, was there a dramatization of this?
No, not, or if there was, I don't know of it.
I'm gonna have to look because maybe it's just my imagination. Because we all know hypnotists, we have pretty good imaginations. So I think it might have been my imagination. Oh, the Rosie the hypno dog get a little antsy.
Yeah.
Well, she's decided that a better food source at the moment may be Dale Garner, who's here doing some video for us. Excellent video.
Oh, yeah, I know Dale.
And it's very sweet with Rosie. So the result is she saw, aha!
Yep. Sweet. So I remember, have you been going HypnoThoughts? Is this the 4th year coming up? I can't remember. Is this the 5th year?
It's the 4th year of HypnoThoughts, but we were not there the first year. The first year we were on a European tour while it was going on. Well, the first year was, it started in, let's see, this is going to be the 4th, so it was the 16th, 15th, 14th, 13th. Yeah, we were teaching in Germany.
Okay, that was 2013, I think.
2013.
I think it was 2013, or I can't remember.
Right.
That's what it was.
No. Now, how can people find out more about your classes? Can they find out HT Live, or do you have an actual website with the information?
On the classes for the HypnoThoughts or our classes in general?
For HypnoThoughts.
Okay, so I am going to be listing them on our website. They'll just be listed there. But the main course we're doing a pre-course on Wednesday and Thursday, the 24th and 25th. And that'll be on the best practices of Dave Elman. And that will be a 2-day course, all it's for people that are hypnotists. So it's not like a total foundation course because it's much more fast-paced. It basically hits the highlights of the Dave Elman book, Hypnotherapy, and it brings it to life. And it's a great course. It goes through the induction. It goes through, oops, sorry.
I thought I had that on silent. Sorry about that. I had put it on silent, but like my dog and my wife, it ignores my instructions.
They ignore the suggestions, right?
Right.
And that's a great way of reinforcing that I ignore your
Exactly.
Of course I do. What?
No, I'm sorry. I was before I forget. I don't know if I've ever told you the story. I think my first introduction to hypnosis was your father's book. I think I was about 6 or 7. I've mentioned this on a lot of podcasts. I was at my grandma's house or great grandma's house. I remember seeing the bookshelf clear as day. There's a bookshelf and saw the Dave Elman book. It's kind of green, isn't it?
Yes. The current edition, I remember, in this way for probably 20 years, is bound in green with gold titling.
I remember, guys. So this had to be I think the early 1980s. I found this book. I remember like picking this book up. The first time I even heard about hypnosis, I'm like going through the book. I was probably 6 or 7. I remember reading. I'm like, oh my God, this is absolutely fascinating. So I actually went home within a couple days of getting my hands on that book. I remember trying to hypnotize my stuffed animals. And the joke till this day is all my animals were somnambulist.
That's funny. That's funny.
So it was
But
actually
you
your
know,
dad that
We
did my
don't
intro.
even go into Esdale.
Yeah, no, I know. I have to go back in time and work on it.
Sean Michael Andrews practiced on a stuffed animal.
How old was he? Was this was in the past couple months, was it?
No, this is years ago. He may still be doing it just because it's a convenience if you're developing newer pattern. If any hypnotist who does not end up developing changes in what he's doing is a fool. You have to take what you've done all the time, look at what you've done, look particularly at how effective something was with a client, and then say, okay, how can I improve this for the next client? So yeah, I would have no criticism of somebody like Sean Michael Andrews actually practicing on a stuffed animal, because what he'll be doing is taking his existing work and expanding it. And I think all of us who are in the profession can do this and should do this.
Oh, that's brilliant. Just sleep. You will no longer think you are a scared little kitty cat.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I'm looking for it.
Now, what are some of your favorite memories of HypnoThoughts in the past three events or 2 events?
Well, we've been thinking about this quite a bit, and probably the primary thing is the variety of people and their backgrounds. We run into a wider variety of hypnotists, particularly since it's worldwide, than we do at most other conventions. And this adds a certain amount of challenge and excitement as far as we're concerned.
We also like the cooperation among the hypnotists. There's a really good feeling of cooperation, from that crosses the lines between all different groups and organizations. So I like that. I mean, there's that feeling of camaraderie. It's really great. What?
There's Vegas for the gamblers out there.
Yeah.
Right. As it turns out, we ourselves seldom go near that. For one thing, we're usually too busy. For another thing, neither of us is a smoker, so we tend to skip that piece of it. Although I'll tell you, one of the big advantages of HTL, Hypnothoughts Live, after the formal portion of the day, we usually convene with our colleagues at one of the watering spots down there, and we end up spending up to dinner and then 3 or 4 hours after dinner trading insights into the profession. And the advantage of having an international crew there is you learn all sorts of things that you don't find normally within other American conventions. And we find this very challenging and very good for us. It's a give and take. I'm sure that some of what I say is of use to them, but also a lot of what they say is of use to me. So it works out very, very nicely. We really do appreciate that piece of it.
Another thing I love is the fact that with the lunches that we have together as all included in part of it, I love the fact that you get to network and sit with different people every day, and much more opportunity than passing each other in the hall between classes. So you get to sit and, half an hour, and get to know a new group of people. So instead of sitting with people that you know, sitting down with people you don't know and really getting to know groups of people. And, so the fact that all the meals are there, it makes it almost sometimes feel, first time I experienced that was at Shelley Stockwell Nicholson's
International Hypnosis Federation.
Right, and that was the first time we had experienced that, and it felt like sleepaway camp for adults. I liked it.
That's a good way of putting it.
Right?
Speaking about the smoking, you guys remember when I was there this past HypnoThoughts, all the previous HypnoThoughts I smoked. One thing I love about this community, I got a couple people that were kind of ribbing me for smoking, and finally, and I've been wanting to smoke, so I think I quit the last cigarette I smoked was before I got on the plane in leaving Vegas. So the last time I smoked was 4 months ago, I think, 5 months ago. So HypnoThoughts actually helped me to finally kick the nasty habit of smoking.
That's great.
That's good. That's great.
That's great. And love the positive energy there.
Oh yeah, a lot of really happy people.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
It's funny. I've had the past couple months. I've had a dream that it's like last minute. I forget about the conference, and I make it to Vegas. I end up missing the conference. I wake up. I'm like, oh god. I'm like, okay, good. I got plenty of time to plan. Yep. For anybody that has never been to the conference, go to www.htlive.net, and your website, I believe it's Dave Elman HypnosisInstitute.com, right?
That's correct.
Dave, D-A-V-E. The tricky part is that there's 2 E's in a row. Dave Elman Hypnosis Institute. Great.
Oh, that's funny. I wrote down a note and I actually missed that second E.
Yeah, it's very
easy. I can see people do that a lot.
Every time we hear from somebody that they tried to reach us and couldn't, they'll phone us up about this. The first thing we say is, did you have 2 E's in there? Because that's the commonest typo error, and there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, I'm not going to abbreviate my father's name, and so they're there. They ought to be there.
And you can't change it.
I don't think he'd like it if I tried.
No, Dave, let me ask. I'm sorry, Larry, Mr. Elman. Let me ask you what is one of your first memories of being exposed to hypnosis via your dad?
Probably taking his course when I was 11 years old. I have an earlier memory, but it's more fragmented. I had gone to him about 6 months before and said, Dad, you're teaching hypnosis. I'd like to take your course. And he had walked me over to our bookcase, grabbed out a very thick book, and said, read this cover to cover, give me a book report, and I'll see if I'll have you in the class. And of course, my reply, any 10-and-a-half-year-old's reply would be, oh, Dad. But I sat down, I read the book, I wrote out my impressions of it, which probably weren't particularly profound or lengthy, brought it back, and he said, good job, let's go to the library. We walked back there, he handed me another book, and he said, you're lucky. In this one, I only want you to do chapters 2, 3, and 8. Went through the same thing. For about 4 to 6 months, this was his standard procedure. And finally I said, when am I going to start taking the class, and why are you doing this? He said, because you will be the only person in the room who is not a graduate of both college and either medical school or dental school, and I'll be darned if you're going to embarrass me. So this is your basic training before you can take the course. And shortly after that, I began taking his course.
Okay. Interesting. So you had to go through a full obstacle course before you could even get in the class.
Basically, and then later on, he would assign homework to all the doctors. Between now and the next class, you are to do, say, 30 inductions on 30 different people, write down your successes and your failures, and an observation of how suggestions took with each one. So one day he comes up to me, he says, Larry, you're not doing your homework. And what do you mean? He says, you haven't got your whatever number of inductions it was that week. And I said, well, Dad, the physicians have a steady flow through of patients. I don't. He said, okay, that's a good excuse, but it's an excuse. You may use the billing I had in vaudeville, go out and be a stage hypnotist, and by next week you're to be back on track. And that's how I became what for many years I claimed was the world's worst stage hypnotist. I now say the world's second worst stage hypnotist because I finally found somebody who actually blew their act worse than me.
Which, no names.
Okay, no names.
Right.
If I got into stage hypnosis, you'd be the third worst in the world.
So,
We should have a convention of those of us at the bottom of the list.
so I want to go back to the pre-course, the Dave Elman best practices course, and why would somebody want to take this course? They would learn a wide variety of Dave's techniques. Most people think of Dave, they think that it's an induction, but there's things way beyond an induction. So we'll be covering the Dave Elman induction, the history of Dave, the group adaptation for the Dave Elman induction, okay, and types of suggestions. How did Dave and Milton Erickson, how did they, how did their types of suggestions differ, and yet how were they sometimes the same? How are they, and where are they most effective? Different deepeners. They'll learn pain management techniques, child hypnosis, some regression. Some people do not or have not learned regression, but and don't want to use it necessarily in their practice, but you're not in control of that sometimes, because sometimes you have a client that's sitting in your chair and they spontaneously go into a regression, or spontaneously go into a past life regression. How do you handle that? What do you do with it? So that will be part of it also. Different types of regression. How does that all work together? What's the difference between hypnotherapy and hypnoanalysis? Because there is a line there. Where does one begin and one end? Or
and what are the rules that are different between the two? Most hypnotists who are able to do this aren't consciously thinking of the fact that the rules differ between the two sides. And so they will be better hypnotists if they understand why and what are the differences, so that they can smoothly transition from one to the other while being effective with the client. Another item that we stress is semantics. And another item that's related to that, but to me is a separate item, is waking hypnosis. Waking hypnosis is basically hypnosis without inducing somebody into a trance state, something where you can actually get a hypnotic reaction, yet the person doesn't know they were hypnotized. A very good and simple example of that is you would come across a scene of an accident, or you walk into an emergency room and somebody is in pain. You can walk over to them, talk with them for maybe a minute, and get them pain relief with waking hypnosis. You haven't bothered to do an induction. You've simply taken your semantics and your approach to make it more comfortable for them. The one caution I'll give you if you're ever in that situation is, don't mask the pain. The physician uses the pain as part of his diagnostic tools, but you can relieve it so that the patient is more comfortable while waiting the 5 minutes or maybe half an hour till a professional gets there. Just know your limits.
So these are just a few of the things within the course, and it's a great way to put more tools in your toolbox. There'll be, it's just taking a lot of the concepts as hypnotists we learn, but then looking at it as, how was it used by Dave Elman? How was it built? How did his course just grow from beginning to work with doctors, and how the doctors themselves were the ones that field tested. The doctors and dentists were the ones that were out there field testing the techniques, coming back with new suggestions, field testing it amongst the doctors in the different cities. And so, I mean, he had a great laboratory using doctors, dentists, and their patients.
There's two incidents along there that I find very, very emotionally important to me. One of them was that when he was first approached by the doctors, he said, "I don't know anything about medicine." And their reply was, "No, but what you know about hypnosis would allow us to make it an effective tool in our practice." Because each of the doctors on the committee that asked him had had a course in hypnosis and been unable to use it. So he began teaching hypnosis, but when he would say something like, hypnosis is useful for pain control, they'd say, what do you mean? And he'd anesthetize somebody's arm. And they would imagine, what can I do with that? And they would then, as Cheryl said, go out field testing them back and say, well, can I do that under this and this condition? And they'd work it out in the class. By the time this had gone on for several years, he had it down to a method. Dr. A comes in with an idea for something where hypnosis is going to be useful in another piece of the profession. Dad would call up a doctor in another city, different city, but same specialty, describe the thing and say, try it and see if that works. And if enough doctors whom he had had experiment with it came back positive and with nuances as to how to use it properly, it would go right into the course syllabus. Now, Dad had a heart attack and was almost, well, he was pretty much an invalid for the last couple of years of his life. I went down to visit him probably about 4 months before his passing, and we were sitting around having a meal, all the family. When the phone rang, my mother answered the phone and said, Dave, this is Dr. So-and-so. Dad says, I'll take that in the other room. Goes in, comes back and says, Pauline, get out the directory we have of our doctors. I want a doctor in this and this specialty, living more than this and this number of miles from this and this city, who's never met Dr. So-and-so, in order to field test this new idea. 3 or 4 months before he passed away, he was still pushing doctors to research additional medical uses of hypnosis. To me, this is one of my treasured memories of my father.
You don't need to comment on this if you don't want. And I heard you guys talking about the difference between Erickson and your father, the different styles. I have heard in passing of some supposed rivalry. Is it anything you can talk about, or is it something you'd rather not?
Rather not.
I'll make one comment. Was there severe disagreement? Yes. Did they ever meet face to face? Absolutely not.
Okay.
There was a great deal of tension. Erickson was convinced that anybody who was not a psychiatrist should not be allowed to use hypnosis. And yet, most of my father's students were not psychiatrists. Dad was not a doctor. The point is that hypnosis should be able to be used by a wide cross-section of people who wish to help others, of basically medical and assorted, what's the word we use for not a medical degree, but helping, I guess, health professionals.
Complementary.
Yeah, complementary medicine. Everybody in that field should be allowed, if properly trained, to use hypnosis. And so I follow my father's belief in that, and I disagree with what Erickson had said on that. On the other hand, I will tell you that in today's world, one of my closest friends and colleagues happens to be Ericksonian. And we make it a point when I'm teaching a class, I ask that person to guest lecture on Erickson, because I feel my students, when they are certified, need to understand Ericksonian, Elmanian, progressive relaxation, all of the various schools of hypnosis. While I may believe myself that my father's is the best of them, that doesn't change the fact that a good hypnotist should understand all of them so that he can relate to others in the profession. And if somebody has a particular approach, method, whatever, for a particular presenting problem, you may very well want to pick up that man's thought process, possibly modify it to match with your particular style and approach to a client session, and use it. And I do this. One caveat on it, though, try and always give credit to the guy you borrowed it from. You do so,
True.
we'll give you credit back, and you'll be able to trade more information, do a better job, both of you, for the total community.
I think it's important to have a good, solid toolbox of methods and techniques because you never know what you're going to need. I use Elman, but I use a variety of what I've used over the years, and they just blend together. You know, I just never know what's going to come out. It's sort of you go in trance with your client, and things just come up. So I think having the different techniques and knowledge in each, you know, having practice using them will only help you become a stronger hypnotist or hypnotherapist because you are going to have, if we are very into being client centered as part of Elmanian hypnosis, we're client centered. And being client centered, you use and whatever is going to work best with that client. So having the knowledge, having the variety, that will help you every day in your sessions.
Let me throw in a
Makes
little
total
bit of
sense.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
Let
I'm sorry. What was that?
me throw in a little bit of humor here. Remember I mentioned waking hypnosis. When I was
Yeah.
at MIT, we had a case where we were going to pull a prank, and it involved doing something at about 1 or 2 in the morning. We were having trouble tying down the item we were using for the prank. The rope wasn't quite tying tight enough. And as I'm pulling on this rope, the night watchman shows up. "What are you doing?" And I turned to him, and using waking hypnosis, I said, "This is a prank totally approved by the dean. Won't you help by pulling on this rope and getting it up straight?"
And he did.
And he did. And we finished off the prank, and we left. And he even wrote up the fact that this had been approved by the dean, and that had all sorts of ramifications on the prank throughout the school. But it was waking hypnosis. Now, how often does a client walk into your office and you're trying to get them to explain their presenting problem? If you are able to use waking hypnosis, can you get them to explain it better? Can you establish rapport with them faster? Can you be in a better position so that when you go to trance, you already know what you're going to have to do? You already know what they will find receptive to them. So I very much suggest that you get some expertise in that area. It's very useful.
So you did ask me about fractionation before. So without going into all the different types, fractionation is basically anything you can use that will take somebody in and out of trance. And as they come, or slightly up and slightly down in trance, modulation, so to speak. And as you do, so in Dave Elman induction, the fractionation that is used is the opening and closing of the eyes. And the opening and closing of the eyes is just one way that it can be done, but each time they open and close their eyes, they go that much deeper into hypnosis. And that is probably one of the fulcrum, the foundation in which Dave actually built the DEI was on, even though he didn't call it fractionation, and it was actually a term coined by the time I was studying with Sean Michael Andrews, it was also already called fractionation, but he did not call it. He called it 3 trips to Bernheim, which will go into the story of what that is. But that's how he referred to it, 3 trips to Bernheim. And that is actually the basis of how he started the Dave Elman induction, to make it a rapid induction, to make it so that it could be done in 4 minutes. And by the time that his last class went through, they were down to 1 minute. I'm real comfortable with the 3 to 4 minutes, which is great.
You can do the 1 minute.
That's still really fast.
You can do the 1 minute, but you really have to tighten your patter to not have a single extraneous word. And for me, that's a strain because I'm in the habit of using the 3-minute version. So I find it possible but difficult. But I listen to recordings where my father has a student who on the very second lesson is doing 1 minute comfortably because he's never picked up the bad habits that I've picked up over the years. So can you do both? Sure you can. Which one should you prefer? What is the presenting problem? What sort of client do you have? Those are your judgment calls. And you'll find that one form works better for this guy and another form works better for that guy. So if you know everything in between, you can massage things to be appropriate. That's what we mean by client-centered. You're watching the client, you're seeing what the client needs and what the client is accepting. You work from there.
Very interesting. You know, I think we got a good amount. I don't know what. Oh, that time flew by. Let's see. So for their classes, go to htlive.net, and I believe there's a tab for presenters, pre-classes, conference classes, etc. Get signed up.
Can you put in a link into the Hangout? Yeah. And so I will send you the exact link to the workshop.
Yeah, actually, I will do that. Hopefully, let me do a little. Okay, so everybody watching, I got to stretch a little bit. I'll put a link right here, and that will take you directly to their classes. Oops, get you back on there. Yeah, I'll edit a link in a little bit, or after I get this published.
And the other thing that I really love about HypnoThoughts Live is that every day they have a raffle. You know, I think in most conferences, there's things scheduled the entire day. They don't schedule things during lunch so people can take the time to eat together. And after lunch, at about 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the afternoon, every day there's a half-hour break where people come into the vendor room. And that helps us as vendors also. And they have a raffle. They give away a $100 bill, and they give away some of the books and DVDs and things that the vendors also donate. But it gives people another time to network, and it gives the vendors the traffic coming through their booths, which also helps. And it gives them the time. So many people go, oh, I meant to get to your booth, but there just wasn't time because they try to fill their dance card every minute with classes. So getting those breaks, I think it's important when you go to conference, go to the classes, but really also take the time to talk to people in the halls, talk to people at lunch, at dinner, because you learn so much over the years. Just you're getting to pick people's brains that you would normally have to pay a lot of money to go learn with. So take advantage of that.
Or you'd have to be somebody that loves hypnosis so much to create a podcast and interview people.